I'm dying, and for the first time in my life, I'm terrified of what comes next. My name is Richard Whitmore. I'm 82 years old. I'm lying in a hospital bed that cost more than most people make in a year. The room is private, quiet, expensive. Everything around me is expensive. The sheets, the view, the machines keeping me alive. But none of it matters now, because I finally understand something I spent my entire life refusing to see. Money can buy you everything, except forgiveness. And I need forgiveness more than I've ever needed anything. They tell me I have days, maybe a week. My lawyers have been here, my accountants, my business partners. Everyone wants to know what happens to the money. $4 billion. That's what I built over 60 years. Offices in 12 countries, my name on buildings, Forbes covers, presidential dinners. I was untouchable. I was powerful. I was a monster, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. Let me tell you who I really was. Not the version you saw in magazines, not the polished interviews or the charity galas I showed up to for photo ops. The real me. I grew up poor. South Side Chicago. My father worked in a meatpacking plant. My mother cleaned houses. We had nothing, and I hated it. I hated the way people looked at us, the way store clerks followed my mother around like she might steal something, the way my father came home smelling like blood and exhaustion. I promised myself I would never be like them. I would never be poor, never be powerless, never be looked down on. So I clawed my way out. I worked, I studied, I fought for every opportunity. And when I finally made it, when I finally had money and power, I became exactly what I hated. I treated people the way I was once treated. Worse, actually, because I knew what it felt like, and I did it anyway. I remember a woman named Maria. She cleaned my office building for years. Quiet, hard-working, invisible. One night I was working late. She knocked on my office door to ask if she could vacuum. I didn't even look up. I just waved my hand like she was swatting away a fly. She apologized, quietly, and left. I didn't think about her again. Not once, until 2 weeks ago, when my assistant told me Maria had passed away. She'd been cleaning my buildings for 17 years. I never learned her last name. That's who I was. There was a man named James. He worked in my warehouse. He came to me once, hat in hand, nervous, and asked if there was any way I could help him. His daughter needed surgery, something with her heart. The insurance wouldn't cover it all. He needed $12,000. $12,000! I made that in less than an hour. But I looked at him and said, that's not my problem. I told him if he couldn't afford his life, maybe he shouldn't have had kids. He just stood there, staring at me. Then he nodded and walked away. I never saw him again. I found out later he sold his car. His wife sold her wedding ring. They got the surgery. But I also found out something else. James used to tell people I was a good man before that day. He defended me when others called me cold. He believed in me, and I crushed that belief with 6 words. I did this over and over. Different faces, different names, same cruelty. I thought it made me strong. I thought looking down on people proved I had climbed higher than them. 3 weeks ago, I collapsed in my office. Heart attack. They rushed me here, ran tests, told me the truth. Stage 4, everywhere. Nothing they can do. And that's when it started. The fear. Not of dying. I always knew that was coming. But fear of what I'd done with the time I had. At night, when the nurses leave and the room goes quiet, I see faces. Maria, James, dozens of others. People I fired for asking questions. Employees I humiliated in meetings because I could. A homeless man I once stepped over on my way into a restaurant. I see them all, and I finally understand. I spent 60 years thinking I was better than them, but I wasn't. I was just richer. And now, lying here, with all my money and all my power, I would trade every single dollar to go back, to do it differently, to be different. Yesterday, my son came to visit. He's 54. We haven't spoken in 8 years. He stood at the foot of my bed and said, "I came because Mom asked me to. Not because he wanted to, because his mother, my ex-wife, asked him to." I looked at him and tried to find something to say, something that would fix decades of absence and coldness. But there was nothing, because you can't fix a lifetime in a hospital room. I asked him, "Do you think I'm a good man?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, and then he said, "I think you were very successful." That's all. Not good, not kind, not loving, successful. And that word, it destroyed me, because he was right. I was successful at building wealth, but I failed at everything else. I never knew my employees' names. I never asked about their families. I never celebrated their wins or helped with their losses. I just used them, paid them, replaced them. I never gave without expecting something back. Every donation had my name on it. Every charity event was a photo op. I never helped someone just because they needed help. And now, at 82, lying here alone, I finally see it. The only thing I actually built was emptiness. You want to know what's haunting me most? It's not the big mistakes. It's the small moments. The security guard who said good morning to me every day for 15 years, I never once said it back. The waitress who served me lunch 3 times a week, I never tipped more than 10%, sometimes less, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I didn't think she deserved it. The kid who asked me for business advice at a conference I told him I didn't have time for amateurs. He just wanted 5 minutes. I couldn't give him that. These tiny moments, these people I dismissed, they're the ones I see now. And here's what I finally understand. Every person I looked down on, every person I humiliated or ignored or stepped over, they were living real lives. They had families, dreams, struggles. They mattered, and I treated them like they didn't. If you're listening to this and you're young, if you have time left, please hear me. Success is not about how much you make. It's about how much you give. Not money, respect, kindness, attention. The richest man I ever knew wasn't in Forbes. He was a janitor at my first office building. His name was Mr. Peterson. He knew everyone's name, remembered their birthdays, asked about their kids. When he retired, 200 people showed up to his party. When I retire, if I ever had, I don't think anyone would have come. That's the difference. He was rich in the only currency that actually matters: love, connection, respect, and I was bankrupt. I have $4 billion, and it's all going to lawyers and taxes and people I barely know. None of it will follow me. None of it will speak for me. What will follow me? The memory of a man who had everything and gave nothing. A man who could have changed lives, but chose to change stock prices instead. A man who built towers, but never built relationships. I'm 82 years old, and I'd give every dollar, every building, every accolade for one more chance. One chance to walk into that warehouse and hand James a check. One chance to learn Maria's last name. One chance to say good morning back to that security guard. But I don't get that chance. Time doesn't negotiate, and regret doesn't heal. So if you're still young enough to change, do it. Not tomorrow, not next year. Today. Look at the people around you, the ones serving your coffee, the ones cleaning your office, the ones you pass every day without seeing. See them, respect them, help them if you can. Because I promise you, when you're lying where I am, you won't remember your bank account. You'll remember the faces, and you'll wish you'd treated them better. My name is Richard Whitmore. I built an empire, and I died alone. Don't make my mistake.